Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek at Old Pueblo Coin, and I'm excited to share with you today some banknotes. I don't often get in banknotes that are in high grade and are certified. You see these plastic holders here. You'll see this is Paper Money Guarantee Corporation here, PMG, NGC's sister company, and this is a fun banknote. I don't see very many $100 national banknotes that are in uncirculated condition. I don't see a lot of hundreds anyways, because one of the areas I kind of like is the Arizona Nationals, and they didn't make any in this denomination. Right? So kind of fun, kind of fun. First Wayne National Bank of Detroit, which is also fun because Detroit Rock City, but also Wayne. All I can think of is Batman right now, Bruce Wayne. So 63, nice uncirculated note. If someone's doing a typeset, this might be a good note to have in a typeset. Pretty note, and we're going to be all over the place. This is all going to be small size, but it's all going to be kind of fun stuff. Here we've got a $1 silver certificate. That's a star note, and really a pretty note. These they made a narrow and a wide, and people collect banknotes in lots of different esoteric ways, so they'll get down to the nitty-gritty. They start collecting the banknotes, and they'll start collecting them by block. These are the blocks here. So this is a star B block. So this 35D, this is the narrow version. And so a nice 65, really more expensive because it's all those things, a 65 star on a narrow block. If it was a lower grade note, it wouldn't be very expensive. This is the 35D series. This is where the series is. On most of the small size notes, that series, the series is in the same location, even with all these different types of notes. So for example, here we went from a national banknote to silver certificate to a legal tender note, and all of them have the series number in the same place, right? The series date 28A, and a real handsome guy here, Honest Abe. Another note that's if someone's collecting by block, this is the DA block. So people can collect by series and then by block number. So you can have really long runs on all of these. People also collect by plate position, believe it or not. The plate position is that tells you where on the sheet this note was located. This note is a 65. Nice gem unk note. And they'll have the EPQ, means exceptional paper quality, on these notes. And on any note that's going to be a 65, one of the things you're going to want to see is nice centering. That's something that they look at, and you're going to want to see corners that are sharp. Those are the type of things that can really knock a banknote down. Is you can have a note that looks really nice, but it can be really off center, or it can be really sharp, but then the corners kind of dull. So to get to a 5, you want to have those qualities. So I don't know if I want to go Reading Rainbow on this or if I'm going to go Reading, Pennsylvania, but either way, I saw this note and all I could think about was how when I played Monopoly, I wanted to get all the trains. I always thought that was the way to win. So I'd have 4 properties and my brother would have the other 28 and I'd lose. So my plan didn't work. Here's another high grade note of 65. On a national banknote. It's not a super rare bank. Usually on the nationals, once you get to a larger state or more populated East Coast state especially, and you get a bigger city, they're not going to be as expensive. Now, I don't know how big Reading is, but maybe it's bigger than Reading. Usually you're going to go based on the size of the city, though, because that's going to be going to show you how many notes survived. One of my favorite areas in the Federal Reserve notes is the earlier notes, even the ones before these. So this here is a 28B. That series is once again here. Now they do have it on 2 locations, but I like the darker green seals. On some notes, the lime greens are more rare or expensive, but I always like the way the dark green seals look. Here's another real nice crisp looking note. Got the White House on the back of the 20. And this one's another Choice 65. Once again, these are notes. You can collect raw notes in AU, and it's probably, $40, not a couple hundred. We're going to move back into the silver certificates. Now this is fun. The 1934 is actually a 1-year type. So it's the only year that has this really big 1 on it. And it's kind of a cool note. It's a continuation from the 28 series, which we call funny backs. You know, and it's just the nickname that stuck. I mean, people thought they looked funny. I don't know. It wasn't my idea. It never was my idea. Anyways, well, once in a while I got to zoom in on some of the detail on banknotes, because even on these small size notes, which I know some of you probably don't find quite as enamoring as the large size notes, you still look at the work on the scrolls and stuff, and then you look at the little red and blue fibers that are in the paper. Just some of that detail always makes it interesting to me. The nice thing about these notes is they don't take up as much room. I mean, they're bigger than coins, but they lay flat pretty well. So this note here, that's a silver certificate, but then it has the yellow seal to it. That's the North African issue. So everything else about the note looks the same, except it's got that big bright yellow seal on it. Of course, they'll also have serial numbers that match up with what it is. Issued during World War II, emergency issue. Nice MS-64 note. And the reverse looks pretty much the same as it does on the notes that you're used to seeing today still. It'd be nice maybe for an upgrade on that. I'm looking forward to a day when they do some circulating commemoratives, or they just change some of them. I don't know who you change where, but we'll see. They were talking about putting Harriet Tubman on, which would be cool, but I don't know which note they would do. They should probably do it on the 20. There's irony on him being, that's a whole other story. There's irony on Jackson being on the currency. But this is another exceptional looking note that is from the World War II emergency issue series. So the Hawaii ones are fun because, you know, you've got Hawaii printed right on there, nice and big and bold, and then of course it's printed twice on the front. They changed the color of the seals and the serial number to brown. It's still a silver certificate, mind you. This one is the is it MS-64 or Choice Unk 64. Real nice note. The centering is a little bit off on this one. The corners are still fairly sharp, so maybe it got dinged for that centering being off, especially on the front. Nice margins on the back, but the front, the centering's off a little bit. Now we're going to get to one of my favorite Federal Reserve notes, which is the earliest issues, the 28s, where they still had the number instead of the letter, because I can count, so I like numbers better. But you know, there's a corresponding number and letter to all of these things, so actually they're the same. So G is the 7th letter of the alphabet, and you'll see that on these notes. When you see a Chicago note, the early notes will have a 7 on it, and it's all over the place. But the G will be the things you're used to seeing, because we don't see these earlier 28 series as much. Here's another note that has really a great look to it. I always like the 10, the reverse of the 10, because you get to look at the car and the people standing there and the light post. I always thought this one was a little bit more dynamic of a note, because you have the building at an angle, which I always thought was really neat, instead of having that front-on perspective here. And you know, this is the U.S. Treasury, so you get to see the angle of the street, which I think is pretty cool. You'll notice on this note again, you've got a note that's really nice grade, but then this is what I'm talking about centering. You can see how much more note there is on the left than on the right. It's kind of like my parking jobs. You know, the one side is always a little bit more open than the other. You see the same thing on the front of the note, where it's a little bit tight on the bottom compared to the top. Now that's not as outrageous as the back. The back centering is off quite a bit. A 64, and so you wouldn't expect to see a 65 with centering like that. All right, we got a couple more notes to show you. This is a note style that we haven't actually shown you yet, which is a Federal Reserve national banknote. It is not a national banknote. It is a Federal Reserve national banknote. So they're issued, they look almost the same as the Federal Reserve notes, pardon me, as a national banknote does. But once again, New York, number 2B, you got B for New York, that's on all the notes. There's always that correspondence when you get into the Federal Reserve banks. And so they look like a national banknote. I'm going to go ahead and cheat here and show you the next note because it's a national also, Westfield, Mass. So, but on these notes, you have the charter number, which is telling you what the bank is. And then on these notes, instead of the charter numbers, you have, of course, just the A, B, C instead. Also, you'll see that they used some of the same bank plates, and they actually crossed out, or tried to cross out, these portions here. You see that? Instead of president, they went to governor, right? And so this, they stamped this on here new with a new signature. And why don't we look closer, shall we? Presidente, presidente. Not quite there, not quite there. And then on this note here, where'd I go? Cashier. And they didn't quite block that out. You know, the printing was off. So the deputy governor and the autograph and that black space were all printed at one fell swoop. And so that's why that'll be offline a little bit and not really cover that up all the way. So back to the New York minute here. MS65, Choice CU65, $290 on that guy. It looks like about what I'm retailing it at. Overall, very nice looking note. Alexander Hamilton became the world's most famous man in pop culture because of a play that came out a couple years ago. Good on you, mate. All right, and finally this Westfield, Mass note, which is cool. One of the things I like about this note, and this is just a little bit idiosyncratic for me, but you've got a pretty low serial number, which you can find lots of times on banknotes that are national banknotes. Also, though, this has a really low charter number. There's like 14,000 and I don't know, 14,300 or so charters. 190 is one of the earlier ones. Lots of time the East Coast banks have those lower charter numbers. And here I just want to point out one more thing you may have noticed on the front. They called it a 63, and here they have the moniker saying Inc. So on these banknotes, always on the back they'll put if there's something else going on. So that was this splotch down here. It had a little bit of inking to the note, which will affect it a little bit. So anyway, also one more note about just currency in general. They'll talk about how well the note's embossed, and you can just look at the different portraits here of how dark or light the embossing is, when some of them have darker embossing than others. And so just things to be kind of aware of on currency in general. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm Ben the Coin Geek. You can subscribe by clicking on the owl button in the corner and watch more videos on the right side of the screen. Thanks.